afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining us. I spent the bulk of today in the St. Louis area, where I spoke to our statewide conference for emergency managers and got an update on the rebuilding efforts in St. Charles, nearly 1 year after it was hit by an EF3 tornado that damaged hundreds of homes and businesses in that community. I then got a chance to visit with the students at the Gateway Hubert Wheeler School, part of the network of 35 schools across Missouri that provide educational opportunities for our state's most severely disabled children and young adults. All of these folks, from teachers and caregivers to first responders, provide essential public services that keep our communities safe, healthy, and strong. Public services that would be put at risk by Senate Bill 509, which I vetoed earlier today. Senate Bill 509 is an unfair, unaffordable, and dangerous scheme that would defund our schools, weaken our economy, and destabilize the strong foundation of fiscal discipline that we've worked so long and hard to build. First, the price tag. Even if we were to accept the legislature's own estimate of this bill's cost, Senate Bill 509 would reduce state revenue by $620 million annually when fully implemented. To put that in context, that's the equivalent of the investments needed to fully fund the foundation formula and keep college affordable with another tuition freeze combined. In a low-tax, fiscally conservative state like Missouri, you simply can't punch a more than $500 million hole in the budget without seriously and permanently harming vital services like public education. Last month, the Missouri School Boards Association released data showing the impact of such a revenue reduction would have on local school districts across our state, and the numbers are stark. $223 million less for our schools each and every year. Once again, that's based on the legislature's own analysis and does not account for the provision we discovered that would wipe out 65% of the general revenue budget and 97% of all income tax collections. The bill says that income taxes on Missourians with incomes over $9,000 a year, and I quote from the statute, shall be eliminated. Now, in addition to the independent analysis from Professor Cheryl Block of Washington University School of Law, this week we saw 2 law professors from the University of Missouri confirm the potentially cataclysmic nature of this provision. So, whether we're talking about $620 million or $4.8 billion, revenue reductions of this magnitude would be crippling, and because of the Hancock Amendment, extremely difficult to undo were this bill to become law. It's important to note that when Kansas passed its own reckless fiscal experiment, the legislature had to come back the very next year and raise taxes by $770 million. Here in Missouri, because tax increases must be approved by a vote of the people, we wouldn't have that ability. So, unless my veto is sustained, Senate Bill 509 can take a $620 million bite out of our budget, or if, as this plain reading says, and the law professors say, the worst case scenario, it blows everything up completely, creating a fiscal catastrophe unlike anything we've ever seen. But in any scenario, and especially in this one, in no scenario under this bill will our schools get the support they need. Let me be clear about that. There is nothing in this bill that protects public education from cuts. Not one of its meaningless delays or triggers would prevent this fiscal experiment from draining hundreds of millions of dollars from our classrooms. Now, we know that that's a problem because in the provisions we put forward with Senator Krause earlier in the session, we had a specific provision that said that nothing would happen until the foundation formula was fully funded. That is not in this bill. That was taken out and is not here. There are no protections for public education in this bill. Members of the legislature rejected that plain meaning protection. So who does this bill protect? Not teachers or firefighters, not kids or cops, not even a vast majority of small businesses. It turns out that most of the dollars Senate Bill 509 would take from our classrooms and college campuses will go to people who quite simply do not need another tax break. Senate Bill 509 cuts taxes on what's called pass-through business income, often reported by wealthy individuals, organized as LLCs, and corporate partnerships like lawyers and lobbyists. The most profitable of these pass-through entities would be able to collect massive windfalls by writing off a quarter of their income, while ordinary families and businesses would be left holding the bag. In fact, 52% of the tax savings Senate Bill 509 would generate would go to the very top 7% of taxpayers. Here's a quick example. Under Senate Bill 509, a lawyer with $1 million business income could write off $250,000 worth of that amount and receive a tax cut of worth more than $18,000. By contrast, a family making Missouri's median income of $44,000 a year, when this bill is fully implemented in 2022, would receive a tax cut of only $32. So here's the trade-off. In exchange for larger class sizes, fewer teachers, and higher tuition, Missouri families get the equivalent of an oil change 8 years from now. Now, I've never been opposed to making responsible changes to our tax code. In fact, I've cut taxes 4 times as governor, and Missouri now has the 6th lowest taxes in the nation. But these special carve-outs for pass-through business income are quite simply the wrong approach. Even the right-leaning Tax Foundation has criticized this kind of scheme for rewarding creative accounting and failing to encourage real economic activity. Our friends in Kansas are learning this lesson the hard way. Just yesterday, the independent rating agency Moody's cited these similar tax cuts in Kansas when they downgraded the state's bonds, a dramatic step that will shift the tax burden to local communities. Moody's said the downgrade reflects Kansas' quote, sluggish recovery and the fact that the state is, quote, no longer adhering to its traditionally conservative financial management practices. Let's just say that these folks in these rating agencies are not jokesters. And this is serious business, very serious business, with the incredibly problematic drafting and the $620 million and the matching of the similar types of tax codes. This report is a definitive indictment of the politically driven tax cuts at any cost approach being blindly pursued, even in this building as we speak. The truth is, our strategic, fiscally disciplined approach to building the economy of the future is working to create jobs and grow the economy all across our state. Missouri has led the nation in technology job growth for 2 years running. Last year, we had faster job growth than 7 out of 8 of our neighboring states, and each day, we're attracting new investments from global brands and small businesses alike. In fact, just yesterday, the same day that Moody's was getting ready to issue its downgrade of Kansas, on the other side of the line, on our side, we were celebrating the rollout of the all-new Missouri-made Ford Transit. The question before us today is whether we will continue moving forward on the proven, fiscally responsible course we've set, or whether we'll veer off on a more treacherous path. Now, the authors of Senate Bill 509 drafted it in such a way that they can just light the fuse and walk away, so that they'll be long gone before someone else has to pick up the pieces of a budget that's been blown apart. So the choice facing members of the General Assembly has never been clearer. They can commit to building a future of opportunity and prosperity for all Missourians, or they can support reckless experiments like Senate Bill 509, but they simply cannot do both. Thank you for your time. I'd be glad to take questions.
Governor, what efforts have you made to reach out to lawmakers to sustain your veto?
We're continuing to communicate with lawmakers of both parties and all across both in this building as well as across the state.
Have you met with anyone personally, say in your office?
Sure.
Okay. Who?
I have meetings with members of the legislature. I had some this week on this matter and others. Each and every week I'm here.
Do you think
those are meetings between me and them, and I prefer they say that. Yeah.
Do you think the lone Democrat that voted for it will vote with you this time?
I think people across Missouri are seeing the problems of this bill, and I feel good energy coming forward on our side all across. This isn't about Democrat and Republican, okay? When you're talking about the credit rating of the state, and you have right in front of you your neighboring state that did very similar to this being downgraded, and the very reasons they're talking about, and no economic proof that you're moving forward, and clear movement in our economy, and putting at risk all of these services, and the drafting errors that they're trying to just ignore. I mean, my sense is this is about continuing a good conversation with Missourians, and Missourians' voices are going to be in where I'm around the state a lot. I talk to a lot of people. I haven't heard anybody say put at risk the services at the Wheeler School. Let's take those 30+ schools that provide, with general revenue, provide services to development of disabled kids, and let's put them at risk so I can get an oil change in 8 years.